Bravo, do you have a fire ground channel for strike name 2323?
Unity stage, sensitive TV.
It looks like it's stopped up here.
Righto. Pretty control message. Stopping, mate.
Trees and branches are the biggest risk to responder safety. They can fall without warning at any time. In this training module, you will learn about the consequences of hazardous trees, the types of hazardous trees, causes of hazardous trees, how to identify hazardous trees, what to do when you identify hazardous trees, and your responsibilities. At the end of this module, you will be asked to complete a short assessment to demonstrate your awareness of tree hazards. The duration of this module is approximately 30 minutes. You can click the mute button if you would prefer to read the course content. Trees present serious hazards to you, your crew, and other responders. If they are not managed properly, the consequences can be serious. Falling trees and branches can block your route, delaying or preventing your access to the fireground. They can also fall on your vehicle, causing damage, injury, or death. Falling trees and branches can fall on you, causing injury or death, or fall after the fire has passed, putting blacking out crews at risk. Falling trees and branches can also damage and cut you off from vital equipment. Falling trees and branches can block your escape routes or compromise safety zones, putting entire crews at risk. To reduce tree hazards, you need to understand the types of hazardous trees. Trees are classified and marked in accordance with the Joint Standard Operating Procedure, which was developed for all fire and emergency services and land management organisations in Australia and New Zealand. Unassessed trees pose an unknown risk. Assessed means that tree hazards have been located and evaluated by a qualified tree hazard assessor. Unassessed areas should not be entered until the tree hazard assessment and treatment is complete. Sound trees have no obvious defects which would weaken the trunk or allow fire to enter. Also, there are no dead branches present. Whilst these trees may have been assessed as sound, it's important to maintain situational awareness. A potential CPD tree, protection assured, also known as a circle tree, is a tree in which its current state is not a CPD tree, but may become a CPD tree if it catches a light or is impacted by another disturbance. It has a high probability of surviving the fire intact based on the proposed protection measures and likely response resources available. A potential clear and present danger CPD tree, protection not assured, also known as a slash tree, is a tree which in its current state is not a CPD tree, but may become a CPD tree if it catches a light or is impacted by another disturbance. It does not have a high probability of surviving the fire intact based on the proposed protection measures and likely response resources available. A CPD tree, also known as a cross tree, is a tree or branch that is expected to fall within the time frame of the current operation and impact personnel in its potential impact zone. There are additional markings you need to know that indicate the presence of a hanger or CPD tree nearby. Trees with hangers have an arrow above a slash or cross tree symbol. The arrow indicates a detached or broken limb or treetop, known as a hanger. This classification allows for more deliberate risk mitigation actions, such as creating an exclusion zone underneath the hanger, or falling a sound tree to remove the hazard. Indicator trees have an arrow and distance to the tree below a slash or cross tree symbol. Indicator trees identify hazardous trees that are obscured by vegetation, difficult to see from control line or too dangerous to mark. To reduce tree hazards, you need to understand what causes trees and branches to fall. A CPD tree is a tree or branch that is expected to fall within the time frame of the current operation and impact personnel in its potential impact zone. Trees that are actively on fire and not able to be safely extinguished will be weakened to the point of failure, becoming CPD trees. Trees with severe structural damage due to recent fire can be very unstable and become CPD trees. There are other factors that can result in trees being classified as CPD trees. These include ground disturbance, tree lean, and damage by heavy machinery or a nearby fallen tree. CPD trees come in different sizes and are not always the biggest and most defective trees on the fireground. Trees most responsible for injury are more likely to be the smaller spar or pole trees. The growth of these trees is typically stunted by a natural thinning process of forests, and they are more likely to burn through at ground level without obvious signs of damage. A systematic assessment and treatment of tree hazards must be undertaken by a qualified tree hazard assessor before blacking out can commence. Larger CPD trees that are actively burning and generating a lot of smoke are obvious. They are easier to identify and must be avoided. Trees that have partially fallen over and are caught up in other trees or trees with hangers are also regarded as CPD trees. There are many typical characteristics and external influences that indicate and increase potential tree hazards. Strong and gusty winds can cause hung-up limbs to fall. Sudden and consistent pressure on tree canopies can cause defective areas of the main trunk to fail, causing the tree to partially or completely fall. Strong winds can also cause trees to fall away from their natural lean. Hangers are broken branches that get hooked up or tangled in other limbs. They can be dislodged by external factors such as wind, the effects of machinery, other trees, or fire during an operation. Hangers can put pressure on the branches supporting them, causing them to break and fall, especially if those branches are weakened by defects, fire, or high winds. Trees are more likely to fall if they have twists, hollows, cracks, or excessive lean, especially if they are subjected to high wind conditions. The structure of trees and branches can be weakened by fire, defects, and high winds, increasing the likelihood that they will fall. Strong winds, heavy rain, and landslips can weaken the root structure of a tree, making it more likely to fall. Also, agricultural and heavy machinery used near trees can disturb the soil, affecting root stability. Under the Joint Standard Operating Procedure, all personnel involved in bushfire response must take the following actions to manage tree hazards throughout operations. All fireground personnel are tree hazard awareness trained. Understand the approved tree hazard marking system. Use tree hazard tape to identify exclusion zones to isolate trees. Do not approach or mark potential CPD or CPD trees. Clearly communicate tree hazards to others through the operational chain of command. Trained tree hazard assessors are tree hazard assessor trained, are formally endorsed to undertake thorough and systematic identification of trees, use tree hazard tape to identify exclusion zones to isolate trees, mark hazardous trees with spray paint, have expertise and experience with trees, Assess and mark hazardous trees before, during, and after events. Determine safe and effective removal strategies for hazardous trees. All fireground personnel should be able to identify CPD trees. It is everybody's responsibility to be situationally aware and alert their supervisor and others in the team if a tree hazard is identified. If it is safe to do so, the tree should be isolated until it can be assessed by a qualified tree hazard assessor. Potential CPD trees are those that present a clear and present danger to personnel. A helpful approach is to look up, down, and around. Press the main hazard you can see. Correct. When looking up, make sure you look for hangers, which are hung-up branches, branch or trunk defects, the effects of wind on the tree, tree lean. The increasing degree of lean of the tree causes additional stress on defects in the tree. Crown weight. Uneven weight distribution of limbs and branches in the tree's crown can cause additional stress on defects. It could also cause the tree to fall in an unexpected direction. Press the main hazard you can see. Correct. When looking down, make sure you look for exposed roots, defects in the lower trunk, active fire or smoke at the base of the tree, active fire or smoke coming from the ground indicating the roots of the tree are burning. This is best done by crews on foot, checking both sides of trees from a safe distance. Press the main hazard you can see. Correct. Hazard trees can be found anywhere, from individual trees to stands of trees and forests. Always assume unassessed trees are high risk and look around for high-risk areas, including fire-killed trees, diseased, stressed, or drought-affected trees, trees beside roads and tracks, trees near escape routes or safety zones. You will also need to understand the difference between identifying and assessing trees. Identifying CPD trees is about observing and identifying potential CPD trees from a safe distance. Assessing CPD trees must be completed by trained and accredited tree hazard assessors. Their expertise ensures they can manage the risk to themselves when approaching CPD trees to mark them. Once you have identified a CPD tree, and if it is safe to do so, you must follow these steps. Exclude access to the CPD tree using yellow and black barrier tape. Isolate the tree hazard by creating an exclusion zone if it is safe to do so. The standard exclusion is a length twice the tree height associated with an identified hazard. This exclusion distance may be adjusted due to unique circumstances existing at a site. For example, it may be suitable to create an isolation area greater than 2 tree lengths to ensure safe access for personnel in an area below the tree hazard on a steep slope. Create an exclusion zone with continuous tape or by putting single loops around trees on the edge of the exclusion zone. If you do not have barrier tape, remain at a safe distance and warn all approaching personnel until tape arrives. Only qualified tree hazard assessors can mark CPD trees. Never drive or walk through an exclusion zone. Always report the location of the CPD tree to your crew leader or fireground contact. Communicate the location of the CPD tree to other nearby personnel. Treatment can only be undertaken by a qualified tree hazard assessor. Treatment means to actively mitigate the risk a tree poses to personnel. This can be done through elimination, isolation, or exclusion. Removal of CPD trees through falling can only be undertaken by suitable plant or by authorized fallers. Only personnel or plant involved in the treatment of CPD trees may enter an exclusion zone for the purposes of falling the tree. Never approach trees with a yellow cross on the trunk. Risks from tree hazards can change as conditions change. For example, wind and fire damage can turn previously safe trees into CPD trees. Dynamic Risk Assessment, DRA, is a continuous process that allows you to maintain safety in changing circumstances. Let's apply Dynamic Risk Assessment, DRA, to the incident from the start of the module. Please make sure your audio is not muted for this video. Let's revisit the video we saw at the beginning of this module, but this time apply Dynamic Risk Assessment to the situation. What risks can you see as the truck drives down the road? And what decisions would you make to ensure the safety of those on board? Now, let's go back to the beginning. Step 1. Evaluate. What is my task? To drive down the road towards a fire. What is going on and what are the hazards? We are driving to an area with an active fire, with trees either side of the road. Has the area been assessed for tree hazards? Step 2. Select. What do I plan to do and how do I plan to do it? Drive down the road maintaining situational awareness, keeping an eye out for any signs of tree hazards. Step 3. Assess. What are the risks of what I plan to do? You can now see smoke indicating that some of the trees ahead are on fire. Step 4. Decide. Is my plan safe? No, we can see that trees are on fire and there is limb and tree debris on the road. Do the benefits outweigh the consequences? No. Responder safety is paramount. Step 5. Modify. Can I make the plan safer? In this case, no. There is nothing that can be done to protect the vehicle if we continue driving. There are no indications that the area has been assessed for hazardous trees. So, the correct course of action in this situation is to stop and communicate this up the chain of command. Dynamic risk assessment is the continuous assessment and implementation of risk controls in rapidly changing circumstances. Everyone can identify CPD trees. CPD trees must be excluded with yellow and black barrier tape. Always communicate the location of CPD trees to nearby crews and the fireground supervisor. Never approach a tree unless it is safe to do so. Never leave a CPD tree without establishing an exclusion zone. Never drive or walk through an exclusion zone. Only qualified tree hazard assessors can assess, mark, and treat hazardous trees. Welcome to the assessment for the Tree Hazard Awareness Training Module. You will be presented with a series of multiple-choice questions. To successfully pass the module, you'll need a score of 100%. Before you finish, please be sure to check what tree hazards exist in your Incident Control Center, ICC, area. You can find out at the Hazardous Tree Mapping website. Click here to visit the website and see where the tree hazards are in your local area.